Mayor Raul Rex Mangubat and his councilors.
The guest of Representative Barsaga, 4th District of Cavite, please rise and be recognized. Welcome to the House of Representatives. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker.
Please proceed.
Mr. Speaker, may I be recognized?
The gentleman from the 1st District of Quezon, Minority Floor Leader
3rd District.
Suarez is hereby recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I respectfully move that Honorable Harlene Neil Abayon be designated as Assistant Deputy, as elected Deputy Minority Floor Leader. Assistant Minority Floor Leader. I so move, Mr. Speaker.
Is there any objection? The chair hears none. The motion is approved.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I move that the following members of the minority be elected to be members for the Committee on Indigenous Peoples. Congresswoman Arlene Arcillas, Congresswoman Cecilia Leonila Chavez, and Congresswoman Julieta Cortuna. I so move, Mr. Speaker.
Is there any objection? The chair hears none. The motion is approved. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, may we recognize the gentleman from the 1st District of Albay, the Honorable Edsa Lagman.
The distinguished gentleman from the 1st District of Albay, Representative Lagman, is hereby recognized.
I was not really aware that we were already passing or approving the recommendation of the Committee on Justice. I was under the impression that such an important resolution will be discussed extensively in the in the plenary, and the distinguished chairman of the Committee on Justice would defend the resolution or the report of his committee. I prepared a number of questions to the distinguished chairman of the Committee on Justice.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, Your Honor, by way of answer to the Honorable Lagman, the committee report of the Committee on Justice has been approved in whole by the plenary a few minutes earlier. In fact, the members of the minority, the Honorable Minority Floor Leader and the Deputy Minority Floor Leader, the Honorable Suarez and the Honorable Atienza, respectively, spoke against the committee report. And then, pursuant to Section 17 of the Rules of Procedures governing inquiries in aid of legislation, which I may read, upon inclusion of the report in the calendar of business, the plenary may approve or adopt, disapprove or reject in whole or in part the report and its recommendations or committed to the archives. Plenary adopted the findings and recommendations of the Committee on Justice.
Well, that is the provision, Your Honor. But under that provision, it is understood that before the plenary would approve, reject, or archive a particular committee report, there should be discussions. And the chairman of the committee is called upon to defend the committee report. But that did not happen, Mr. Speaker. I don't think we should be accustomed to fast-tracking certain actions of this House, particularly on very important measures. May we know whether the consideration of that committee report number 14 of the Committee of Justice has been included in the reference of business for consideration today?
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, Your Honor, plenary action on the committee report is as follows, covered by Section 17 on the Rules of Procedures governing inquiries in aid of legislation. Everything was done in order, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor. May I read Section 17, plenary action on the report. The report, upon inclusion in the order of business, this is by the Committee on Rules, shall be referred to the Committee on Rules for appropriate action. The Committee on Rules shall thereafter include the report in the calendar of business. Mr. Speaker, the Committee on Rules met at 3:30 this afternoon, and it was approved by the Committee on Rules for inclusion in the calendar of business of plenary today after spirited debate lasting more than an hour, where the sponsor himself was in defense of his measure, questioned by many of the members of the Committee on Rules. The session was well underway when the Committee on Rules ended its special meeting on debate on Committee Report number 14, and it was included in the calendar of business for today.
May we be furnished with a copy of the calendar of business wherein this particular Committee Report number 14 was included?
Mr. Speaker, Your Honor, this is a copy of the business for the day, which I will hand personally to our honorable colleague.
That was not circulated to the members of the House. It could be with the Rules Committee or with the Majority Leader, but it was not in any manner distributed to the members of the House. As a matter of fact, earlier this afternoon, I made a reservation with the Majority Leader and with the Deputy Majority Leaders that I have questions on the report. I don't have any copy of the calendar where this Committee Report number 14 has been included.
Mr. Speaker, Your Honor, we ask for a few minutes suspension.
Session suspended.
Sinabi ko sa iyo kanina. Magkakaroon ako sa committee report. Sinabi ko rin sa kanina. Sinabi ko sa kanya rin. I told him. Sinabi ko sa iyo.
Session resumed. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we again recognize the distinguished gentleman from the 1st District of Albay, the Honorable Edsel Lagman.
The distinguished gentleman from the 1st District of Albay, Representative Edsel Lagman, is hereby recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. But let me first say that, like the rest, most probably of the members, we do not have a copy of the calendar wherein this particular this particular committee report number 14 has been included for plenary consideration. Number two, the members of the House do not have a complete copy of the report. The report includes a voluminous annexes. And how can the members of the House really vote on this very important report without getting a complete copy of the report with the annexes? Having said that, Mr. Speaker, let me go to my manifestation. We congratulate the leadership and membership of the Committee on Justice for deciding not to find probable cause and not to recommend the prosecution of Senator Lima for allegedly receiving drug money from convicts and inmates of the new Bilibid prison. But having said that, Mr. Speaker, I surmise that the Committee on Justice decided against finding probable cause and recommending the prosecution of Senator De Lima because the Committee on Justice does not have the jurisdiction to find probable cause and recommend the prosecution of any person alleged to have committed a crime. The jurisdiction of the Committee on Justice, pursuant to our rules, Section 28BB, is limited to, and I quote, all matters directly and principally relating to the administration of justice, the judiciary, the practice of law, and integration of the bar, legal aid, penitentiaries and reform school, adult probation, impeachment proceedings, registration of land titles, immigration, deportation, naturalization, and the definition of crimes and other offenses punishable by law and their penalties. In other words, the jurisdiction of the Committee on Justice does not extend to the investigation of any malfeasance, misfeasance, and nonfeasance in office committed by officers and employees of the government and its political subdivisions and instrumentalities. As a matter of fact, this is the jurisdiction of the Committee on Good Government. In fact, Mr. Speaker, the jurisdiction to find probable cause with respect to the commission of crimes belongs to the prosecutorial agency of the government or the office of the public prosecutor under the Department of Justice. Even House Resolution number 105 did not specifically direct the Committee on Justice to investigate the allegation that Senator De Lima received drug money from convicts and inmates of the new Bilibid prison. Let me quote the resolutory portion of the resolution. And I quote, "Now, therefore, be it resolved as it is hereby resolved that the House of Representatives direct the appropriate committee to immediately conduct a comprehensive investigation on the proliferation of drug syndicates in the NBP, including the involvement and accountability of the authorities mandated to exercise control and supervision over the National Penitentiary under the leadership of the Secretary of the Department of Justice, Laila M. De Lima, and such other heads of law enforcement agencies tasked with implementing law enforcement policies, particularly those in containing the use, proliferation, and trade of illegal and prohibited drugs. So in other words, what was directed to the appropriate committee is not finding linkage between the convicts and inmates engaged in the narcotics trade and Senator De Lima as having received drug money. The accountability here being pursued by the committee is with respect to whether the leadership at that time failed to exercise control and supervision over the National Penitentiary. And that is the clear language of the resolutory clause of the resolution. Now, Mr. Speaker, distinguished colleagues, since the Committee on Justice has no jurisdiction to find probable cause and recommend the prosecution of Senator De Lima, and the investigation of malfeasance, misfeasance, and nonfeasance committed by government officials and employees belong to the jurisdiction of the Committee on Good Government, and the authority to find probable cause with respect to the commission of crimes belongs to the prosecutorial agency of the government or the Office of the Public Prosecutor under the Department of Justice. The question is, why then did the distinguished chairman of the Committee on Justice allow the introduction of affidavits and testimonies on Senator De Lima's alleged receiving of drug money? This was beyond its jurisdiction, and it was not directed to make such investigation. Then, presenting from the foregoing premises that the Committee on Justice has no jurisdiction, the jurisdiction belongs to the prosecutorial agency of the government or to the Committee on Good Government, the next question is, why then did the committee include in its committee report the following findings? A, and I quote, Ablen and Ragos testified that they personally delivered the money collected from the inmates to the house of then Secretary De Lima. Likewise, all witnesses, inmates, except for Sebastian, testified that they were instructed through Ronnie Dayan, Jonel Sanchez, and J.B. Sebastian to raise money for the campaign funds of Secretary De Lima for her senatorial bid. The inmate witness tagged Secretary De Lima as the protector of drug syndicates. All this transpired during Ragos and Bocayo's incumbency as head of the Bureau of Correction, unquote. There was no necessity of placing this finding because in the first place, the committee has no jurisdiction to investigate malfeasance, misfeasance, and nonfeasance. It has no authority to investigate on the alleged or on the allegation that Senator De Lima received drug money. So this is completely off-tangent, irrelevant, and impertinent to the report. B, the committee report says, the confluence of events and circumstances point in no uncertain terms the veracity of the statement of witness that during the tenure of then Secretary De Lima, between 2012 and 2015, a fundraising activity transpired to finance her senatorial bid in 2016. Again, the committee has no jurisdiction to make this finding because it has no power or authority to find probable cause and recommend the prosecution of any person who has committed a crime. As a matter of fact, it did not recommend the prosecution of Senator De Lima. From the news reportage and the statements before the Committee on Justice of DOJ Secretary Aguirre, he purposely brought witnesses to the Committee on Justice to prove, among others, that Senator De Lima received drug money from convicts and inmates of the New Bilibid prison to fund her senatorial campaign. Now, the Committee on Justice is deferring to the jurisdiction of the Department of Justice to prosecute De Lima. If the chairman of the Committee on Justice was allowed to defend his committee report, I should have asked him to explain the ping-pong interplay between the Department of Justice and the Committee on Justice. With this development, with the Committee on Justice deferring to the Department of Justice the prosecution of Senator De Lima, there is credence to the accusation that the Committee on Justice allowed itself to be used by the Executive Department to the Secretary of Justice in embarking on a malevolent odyssey of shaming and vilifying Senator De Lima. Had the distinguished chairman of the Committee of Justice been asked to defend his report, then he could have the option to answer or react to this statement. One of the recommendations of the Committee on Justice is the reimposition of the death penalty on drug cases. It says in its report, and I quote, "The reimposition of the death penalty on drug cases pending the reform of the criminal justice system." This recommendation is not necessary because pending for consideration is Administration Bill number 1 calling for the reimposition of the death penalty on heinous crimes. The Committee on Justice need not conduct an investigation to make this particular recommendation because this is already covered by House Bill number 1. Of course, I am against this measure because it took me 20 years of crusade for the abolition of death penalty. This is not the time to discuss why the death penalty should not be restored. Among the legislative measures recommended by the Committee on Justice are granting of exceptions to the anti-wiretapping law, bank secrecy law, and anti-money laundering act with respect to inmates and drug-related cases. But if my distinguished colleagues read the committee report, there were no specific amendments and specific exception to the aforesaid statutes which the Committee on Justice recommended. In other words, remedial legislation or in aid of legislation was not the primary objective of the Committee on Justice. It also recommended in changing the status of prison guards and other NBP personnel to tenured employees, from tenured employees to confidential employees, in order to provide flexibility in the Bucor director in reassigning or dismissing errant guards and personnel. I hope the Committee on Justice understood the import of this recommendation. If this proposal is approved, what will happen to the security of tenure of prison guards and other NBP personnel who are under the civil service? The proposal ensnares both the innocent and culpable personnel of the New Bilibid prison. I know that the members of the House are now raring to start their vacation. I have other questions and matters to discuss, particularly on why the Committee on Justice embarked on this investigation with respect to the existence of a narcotics trade in the New Bilibid prison when way back years ago. And until very recently, this is an open secret. It has been investigated before, and what is needed is the prosecution of the culprits and the guilty parties. So, I would say that this investigation of the Committee on Justice was an exercise in futility, except to align itself with the executive in a campaign to shame and vilify a member of the Senate. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. And I don't know how my vote was recorded because I did not participate in the voting, but let that be as it is. Thank you again, Mr. Speaker.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, in accordance with our rules, I move that we authorize all committees to conduct meetings or public hearings if deemed necessary during the House recess from October 22, 2016 to November 6, 2016.
Is there any objection? The chair hears none. The motion is approved.
Mr. Speaker, before we adjourn, allow me to thank and commend the members for their attendance in 39 session days since the convening of the 17th Congress on July 25, 2016. The average attendance of members for the 39 session days reached 257 members for every session day, or 88% attendance. I also thank and commend the members for the record-setting approval of the maiden budget of the Duterte administration by the House of Representatives under the leadership of Speaker Pantaleon Alvarez. Nung nakaraan po, pag nagbabudget plenary debates po tayo, matagal-tagal na rin tayo sa Kongreso, 10 araw po yan. Inaabot pa na umaga. For the first time in history, plenary debates were done in 8 days. Tapos po yung budget and second reading. More so, Mr. Speaker and honorable colleagues, for the first time in history, in all of the 8 days, the roll was called every morning during session, and we had quorum every time the roll was called. The calling of the roll of members every morning is unprecedented. Another accomplishment is that the Chamber has acted on measures filed before it. As of this date, there are more than 4,000 bills and 500 resolutions filed and referred to various committees. We have 6 bills already approved on third reading, 2 bills approved on second reading, and 21 resolutions duly adopted. We also have adopted the recommendations of a committee as a result of its conduct in aid of legislation, and during the 39 session days, 98 privileged speeches were delivered, with 85 of them duly referred to various committees. On behalf of the Speaker, who is an official travel and business to the People's Republic of China, I commend and congratulate all members for their hard work and dedication. This has been a truly productive session. Special mention goes to Senior Deputy Majority Leader Rimpi Bondok and the members of the Committee on Rules, to Chairman Carlo Nograles and the Vice Chairpersons of the Appropriations Committee, Minority Leader Danny Suarez and the members of the minority, our colleagues from the group of 7 independents for the collaborative and critical collaboration that we have. We hope to make this Congress the best ever. On that note, Mr. Speaker, I move that we adjourn until Monday, November 7 at 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Is there any objection? The chair hears none. The session is adjourned until 4 o'clock, November 7, 2017.